For example, if internal emails suggested that certain decisions were made to protect profits rather than ensure safety, it could create a negative public reaction. Even if Bugatti did nothing wrong legally, the way these internal discussions are perceived by the public could cause serious damage to their image. This is why many companies try to avoid legal battles that involve extensive discovery. The risk of exposing sensitive information is often too high. In this situation, Mat Armstrong's legal team would likely request a wide range of documents related to the Chiron rebuild and Bugatti's policies. This could turn the case into a major investigation of the company's internal operations. For Bugatti, this would be a situation they would want to avoid at all costs. The potential damage from discovery alone could outweigh any benefits of winning the case. Beyond the legal challenges, there is also the issue of public perception. In today's world, public opinion can be just as important as the outcome of a court case. If Bugatti decided to sue Mat Armstrong, it would likely create a strong reaction from the public. Many people would see it as a large corporation trying to silence an independent creator. This kind of situation often leads to what is known as a David versus Goliath narrative, where the smaller party is seen as the underdog and gains widespread support. Mat Armstrong already has a large audience, and his followers would likely stand by him. In addition, the story could attract attention from media outlets, automotive communities, and even people who are not usually interested in cars. This could turn a simple legal dispute into a global discussion about fairness, ownership rights, and the power of big companies. There is also something called the Streisand effect, where attempts to suppress information actually lead to more people becoming aware of it. If Bugatti tried to take legal action, it could bring even more attention to the situation and increase support for Mat. Even if Bugatti eventually won the case, the damage to their reputation could be significant. People might remember the lawsuit more than the outcome, and it could change how they view the brand. For a luxury company like Bugatti, image and reputation are extremely important. Their brand is built on exclusivity, quality, and trust. Any action that makes them appear aggressive or unfair could have long-term effects. This is why many experts believe that Bugatti is focusing on managing the situation through public communication rather than legal action. Another important factor in this situation is the complexity of international law. This case would not be limited to one country. Mat Armstrong is based in the United Kingdom, FXG has connections in the United States, and Bugatti operates in Europe with ties to multiple countries. The Chiron rebuild itself is happening in the United States. This creates a complicated legal situation where it is not immediately clear which country's laws would apply. Different countries have different rules about defamation, free speech, and consumer rights. For example, some countries offer stronger protections for companies, while others focus more on individual rights. Deciding where the case should be heard would be a major challenge in itself. This process is known as determining jurisdiction, and it can take a long time and cost a lot of money. Both sides would likely argue for the case to be heard in a location that benefits them. For Bugatti, this could mean choosing a country where laws are more favorable to businesses. For Mat Armstrong, it would likely mean choosing a country with strong protections for free speech. These legal battles over jurisdiction can be very expensive, often costing millions before the actual case even begins. For Bugatti, this raises an important question. Is it worth spending so much money on a legal case that may not provide a clear benefit? When you consider the legal costs, the risks of discovery, and the potential damage to their reputation, the answer becomes less clear. This is another reason why taking the issue to court may not be the best option for them. When all of these factors are combined, it becomes easier to understand why this situation has remained a public debate rather than a legal battle. Bugatti appears to be taking a more strategic approach by addressing the issue through public statements and media rather than through the courts. This allows them to share their perspective, explain their decisions, and maintain some level of control over the narrative. At the same time, it avoids the risks associated with legal action, such as discovery, high costs, and negative public reactions. For Mat Armstrong, continuing to share his experience through YouTube allows him to connect with his audience and present his side of the story without facing immediate legal consequences. This creates a situation where both sides are using different methods to influence public opinion. In the end, this is not just a story about a car or a repair project. It is a reflection of how modern conflicts between individuals and large companies are handled in the digital age. Social media, public perception, and legal systems all play a role in shaping the outcome. While it is still possible that legal action could happen in the future, it seems unlikely given the risks involved. For now, the battle remains in the public eye, where opinions are formed, stories are shared, and reputations are shaped. This is why the situation continues to attract attention and spark debate. It is a reminder that in today's world, winning a legal case is not always the same as winning in the eyes of the public. Another important point to understand in this situation is how carefully Mat Armstrong and FXG have presented their statements throughout the entire Chiron rebuild process. When you go back and look closely at the videos and comments, it becomes clear that a lot of thought has gone into how things are said. This is not random or careless communication. Instead, it appears to be very deliberate. For example, Mat often explains that the decision to repair the car independently was not forced by Bugatti, but was a choice made by FXG. This detail is very important because it avoids directly accusing Bugatti of preventing repairs altogether. Instead, it shifts the focus toward Bugatti's policies, especially their refusal to sell certain parts. This kind of framing makes a big difference in a legal context. It turns what could be seen as an accusation into more of an opinion based on personal experience. Similarly, many of the statements made by FXG are presented as questions rather than direct claims. Asking why certain parts cannot be sold, or pointing out possible inconsistencies in the company's decisions, is very different from stating that Bugatti is doing something illegal or unethical. In most legal systems, questions and opinions are given a high level of protection. This makes it much harder for a company to argue that they are being defamed. It also shows an understanding of how public communication works in today's world. By keeping the tone measured and focusing on documented experiences, Mat and FXG reduce their legal risk while still sharing their story with millions of viewers. This approach is one of the key reasons why Bugatti would have a difficult time building a strong legal case. It is not just about what was said, but how it was said. The careful wording, combined with video evidence and documentation, creates a strong defense that would be difficult to overcome in court. At the same time, Bugatti's response to the situation also reveals a lot about their strategy. Instead of filing a lawsuit or making aggressive legal threats, the company chose to communicate through public channels, including a video message from their CEO. This type of response is very different from a legal approach. A lawsuit is about proving facts in a courtroom, while a public statement is about shaping how people feel and what they believe. By choosing to speak directly to the audience, Bugatti is trying to explain their position in a way that feels reasonable and responsible. They have focused heavily on safety concerns, explaining that their strict policies are designed to ensure that their cars are repaired to the highest standards. This message is important because it aligns with their brand image as a luxury manufacturer that values quality and precision. However, this approach also has its limitations. In a public video, the company can present their side of the story without being challenged in the same way they would be in court. There is no cross-examination, no requirement to provide internal documents, and no legal obligation to prove every claim. This makes it a safer way to communicate, but it also means that some viewers may remain skeptical. People may wonder whether the safety argument is the full story or if there are other factors involved, such as protecting brand control or limiting independent repairs. Even so, from a strategic point of view, this approach makes sense. It allows Bugatti to respond without taking on the risks of a legal battle. It also gives them the opportunity to influence public opinion, which is a critical factor in situations like this. In many ways, this shows that Bugatti understands the modern media landscape, where perception can be just as important as facts. If we imagine for a moment that Bugatti did decide to move forward with legal action, the sequence of events would likely be very complex and unpredictable. The first reaction would almost certainly be public backlash. News of a lawsuit against a popular YouTuber would spread quickly across social media, automotive forums, and news outlets. Many people would view the situation as a powerful company trying to silence an individual, regardless of the legal details. This kind of reaction can grow very quickly, especially when influencers and online communities get involved. The story would likely reach people who had never even heard of the Chiron rebuild before, increasing the level of attention and scrutiny. At the same time, the legal process itself would begin, starting with filings, responses, and arguments over jurisdiction. This stage alone could take months or even years to resolve. Once the case moved forward, the discovery phase would begin, opening the door to requests for internal documents and communications. This is where things could become particularly difficult for Bugatti, as their internal operations would be examined in detail. Even if the company had strong legal arguments, the process itself could create negative headlines and public discussion. As the case continued, both sides would likely spend large amounts of money on legal fees, expert witnesses, and other expenses. This would turn the situation into a long and costly battle with no guaranteed outcome. In many cases like this, lawsuits do not actually go all the way to trial. Instead, they are settled privately, with both sides agreeing to certain terms in order to avoid further risk. If that happened here, the final result might never be fully known to the public. However, the impact of the case would still be felt, especially in terms of how people view Bugatti and its relationship with independent builders and customers. Another key aspect of this situation is how it connects to a larger movement that has been gaining attention in recent years, known as the right to repair. This movement focuses on the idea that people who own products, including cars, should have the ability to repair them without being restricted by manufacturers. Supporters of this movement argue that companies should not have complete control over repairs, especially when it comes to selling parts or providing necessary information. In the case of the Bugatti Chiron rebuild, this issue becomes even more visible because of the car's extreme value and exclusivity. When a company like Bugatti limits access to parts, it raises questions about ownership and control. Does owning a car mean having full freedom to repair it? Or does the manufacturer still have a say in how it is maintained? These are complex questions with no simple answers. However, situations like this one often become symbols of larger debates. If Bugatti were to take legal action, it could turn Mat Armstrong into a representative of the right to repair movement, whether that was his intention or not. This could bring even more attention to the issue and attract support from groups that advocate for consumer rights. For Bugatti, this would add another layer of risk, as the case would no longer be just about one car or one YouTuber. It would become part of a much bigger conversation about how companies interact with their customers. This is another reason why a legal approach could have unintended consequences. It could amplify the issue rather than resolve it, creating long-term challenges for the company's image and policies. In the end, the situation between Bugatti, Mat Armstrong, and FXG highlights how much the world has changed in the age of digital media. In the past, a disagreement like this might have remained private or been handled quietly through legal channels. Today, it is playing out in front of millions of viewers, with each side presenting their version of events to a global audience. This creates a new kind of environment where legal strategy, public relations, and online influence are all closely connected. Companies can no longer rely only on traditional methods to protect their reputation. They must also consider how their actions will be perceived by the public, especially in a world where information spreads quickly and opinions are formed in real time. For individuals like Mat Armstrong, this environment provides an opportunity to share their experiences and challenge larger organizations in ways that were not possible before. However, it also comes with its own risks, as public attention can be unpredictable and intense. As this situation continues to develop, it will likely remain a topic of discussion among car enthusiasts and beyond. Whether or not it ever reaches a courtroom, it has already become an important example of how modern conflicts are handled. It shows that the outcome of a dispute is not always determined by legal arguments alone. Instead, it is shaped by a combination of facts, perception, and the ability to communicate effectively with an audience. This is why the story continues to capture attention and why it serves as a reminder that in today's world, the court of public opinion can be just as powerful as any legal system. Another important detail that often gets overlooked in this situation is the role of ownership and expectations when it comes to ultra-luxury cars like the Bugatti Chiron. When someone buys a vehicle at this level, they're not just purchasing a machine. They're entering into a very specific kind of relationship with the manufacturer. Companies like Bugatti design their ownership experience to be highly controlled, with strict service requirements, approved technicians, and carefully managed parts distribution. From Bugatti's point of view, this level of control is necessary to maintain safety, performance, and brand reputation. A car like the Chiron is incredibly complex, and even small mistakes in repairs could lead to serious problems. However, from the perspective of the owner, this level of control can feel limiting. If someone legally owns the car, they may believe they should have the freedom to repair it in any way they choose, including working with independent specialists. This difference in expectations is at the heart of the conflict. Mat Armstrong's rebuild project has brought this issue into the spotlight by showing what happens when an owner tries to step outside the official system. The challenges faced in obtaining parts and information highlight how tightly controlled the process is. For many viewers, this raises questions about fairness and practicality. If a car is damaged and the owner wants to repair it without going through the manufacturer, should they be allowed to do so easily? Or does the manufacturer have the right to set limits in order to protect their product? These are not simple questions, and they do not have easy answers. However, the situation has made one thing very clear. There is a growing tension between traditional business models and modern expectations of ownership. This tension is likely to continue as more people begin to question the limits placed on products they own, especially when those limits are enforced by